Good morning. The special meeting of the Bellflower City Council is called to order on Monday, February 17, 2026 at 10:03 a.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Here.
Councilmember Dutton,
Here.
Councilmember Coops,
Here.
Councilmember Morse,
Here.
Mayor Santenaz.
Here. All right, public comments, Mr. Smooth. Your microphone.
Oh, sorry, it didn't go on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3A, the public may address the City Council on matters listed on the agenda. Those wishing to speak on a listed item should come to the podium, be recognized by the mayor, and state your name for the record. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the City Council.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak on these two agenda items for this morning? Yeah, please come up. Morning, Larry. I think your microphone. There you go.
Thank you very much, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate all of the efforts the City Council has made to move the resolution on cannabis forward. I do have a couple concerns, just in understanding about how the guaranteed tax would work. I've been in cannabis now, this is going into my 12th year. I've seen ups and downs in cannabis, and I've seen changes in regulations impacting cannabis, and I have concerns about how the minimum tax would work. In preparing a forecast, you prepare it kind of very bullishly in what you're hoping to achieve within your business, but also realistically, especially when you're looking at the cost and expenses associated with that business. So having to have something that we would be putting in for a 3-year period of time, our forecast that we would be putting forward is a 36-month forecast. Would we be committing to the guaranteed taxes for a 36-month period of time too? And what happens if the economics turn downward in some way? Is there a methodology for being able to come back to the city and addressing that? We've heard how other cities are coming in. If in a 3-year period of time we are surrounded by cannabis in other cities, that could potentially impact our sales. At the same time, if we have something like another COVID or something like that come in, that could also impact our sales. So I want to understand the thinking around the guaranteed tax, whether that can be different than the pro forma, and how would we address changes in market conditions or the business. Thank you for letting me address these questions to you.
All right. Thank you, Larry. Those are very valid concerns, and I'm sure that just for staff's sake, I think I will pull the item later on when it comes up for discussion, because I have similar question how it's going to work out. Okay. So I'm sure we're going to discuss that. Yeah. All right. Anyone else would like to speak on these two agenda items? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to close the public comments. There's no request to appear remotely at this time. And so the next item is item 5A. Mr. Smoot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, you all have had a number of discussions in this regard as far as potential measures for June and/or November of this year. I've asked Wang Su and Anna to put together some of the options that you've narrowed down at your last special meeting with regard to economic development. You sort of narrowed it down to 2 more specific options, and we have some information and some questions to leave you with today. Hopefully we can gather some direction from you. So if you want to put something before the voters in one of those 2 elections coming up, we have some time to start prepping for that, because that's going to start moving very, very quickly. So with that, I'll leave it to Wang Su and Anna to go forward, and then I'll answer questions.
All right. Thank you. Wang Su, Anna.
All right. Good morning, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Before we begin, Happy Lunar New Year to all of you, and thank you for taking the time to be here this morning. As Mr. Smoot alluded to at the beginning, we'll bring this down to 2 items as a follow-up to the economic development session last Monday. For for the discussion of a parcel/property vacancy tax, and then I'll try to breeze through that as fast as I could, and then Anna will blow us away with her portion of the business license tax presentation. Let me just put on my guys. Before we begin and to go into some of the examples or exemplary cities that are currently implementing such vacancy taxes, here's just here's just a slide of some of the cities that have discussed or implemented and tried and or failed at it. As you all know, the parcel vacancy tax is something that has caught traction over the last 8 years, especially ever since the adoption and approval by the voters in Oakland in 2018. There were several discussions in larger cities like LA, San Diego, Davis over the last 6 years. However, to date, there is still no vacancy tax in those cities. And as you all know, 4 years ago, the city of Bellflower also discussed the unutilized commercial property taxes, and we'll touch up on that as well. Just as a point of note, Sacramento started preparing for their property vacancy taxes for the ballot of this year, starting in 2023. And that kind of speaks to the volume of the level of preparation and work that goes behind on putting something like this on the ballot. And their initial polling in 2024, there was an overall pessimistic polling by the residents. However, after going back and forth with the residents with education and community engagement efforts, that trended up, especially when they tied that revenue source to a specific use, especially homelessness. That is a challenge that is unique to Bellflower as well. As we kind of go through this study session, if we can, I would recommend keeping that in the back of our minds. Santa Cruz failed their form of vacancy tax measure and 4 years ago. It's quite the challenge as a vacancy tax or parcel tax to pass that 2/3 vote, and we saw that come to light as Santa Cruz, after all their efforts, that has failed. And as we go through this presentation, you will notice that we will steer away from talking about any of the residential vacancy taxes. San Francisco is currently had their Prop M under appeal after the San Francisco Superior Court judge ruled last year that the measure violated the U.S. Constitution's takings clause and property owners' rights under the Ellis Act. And so while San Francisco dukes it out on basically about everyone else's behalf in the state of California, we'll kind of hold off on the residential vacancy tax. And Berkeley was also served with a lawsuit last year as well on the residential side. San Francisco's Prop D, which was passed 6 years ago, the commercial vacancy tax, they take a look at in certain designated areas of the vacant commercial buildings, and they tax them on a per linear footage based upon the storefront of the commercial building. And my laser pointer is not working, but there's a per linear footage. If you look at the top right, per year, or year over year, the penalty, the taxation for the vacancy of the commercial, it doubles every year. What effectively this tax is doing is the longer you stay vacant, the more taxation is brought upon those commercial property business owners. San Francisco, for the purposes of the commercial vacancy tax, they identify or they define vacant to mean unoccupied, uninhabited, or unused for more than 182 days, effectively more than half of the year. And they provide exemptions for nonprofit organizations. San Francisco, initially, when this was passed, there were some challenges regarding the implementation and getting the commercial property owners on board and filing for this on a timely manner. And so what San Francisco does now is, if you're in these commercial vacant properties, whether you're the owner, tenant, or subtenant, you're required to file for it, whether it is vacant or not. It's kind of a catch-all net to try to get them all to submit for that.
So question, so there's no distinction between a vacant lot and a vacant building?
So we'll see that in Oakland. In Oakland's example,
No,
for San Francisco,
there's no distinction.
it's just this is for the commercial vacant building for San Francisco.
Oh, just buildings?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's based on the linear footage of the frontage of the space that is vacant for that given year. Oakland also passed Measure W in 2018, and if you see just about any staff report and any presentation from cities that are trying to implement such measure, they reference Oakland's vacant property or parcel tax. They just tax it on a flat fee per parcel basis, and they don't differentiate whether it is a residential, condominium, non-residential parcel with ground floor commercial activity, or whether it's undeveloped. They just catch it all and throw it in as a parcel tax. Oakland does take a more restrictive meaning of vacant, meaning if it is used less than 50 days per calendar year, you are considered vacant, opposed to the 182 days for San Francisco. And the city has a definition of what vacant means and what in-use definition means. For in-use, it's is there a lawful inhabitant there? Is there a civil business there? Is there ingress, egress of people coming in and out of that parcel? And there's also an item that city administrator or the city manager can determine what is vacant or not, and whether, if this moves forward, Mr. Smoot decides to do that or not is a whole different conversation. But Oakland's major pushback from its residents and property owners and businesses is that the fact that it is taxed on a per parcel basis, there is the argument of this is not an equitable taxation model. Meaning, for example, if I had one parcel as a single individual and I was getting taxed at $6,000 per parcel for a non-residential, but there is a Gorecki LLC that owns 100 parcels in the city, and he's also getting taxed at $6,000, same amount, there's an argument of that inequitable setup. Another method of doing such taxation is moving towards a per square footage basis, which Bellflower has considered in the past, their discussion back in 2022. Again, if we were to move forward with something along the lines of what Oakland was doing, we would also recommend just striking out the residential, condominium, duplex, townhome, and under separate ownership section, just because of what we're seeing in Sacramento and with Berkeley. We kind of want to leave the residential side of it alone. And then Oakland also has 10 exemptions down here that would exempt them from this taxation. It's basically, is there hardship, is there income restrictions, are you a 501c3, or are there building, construction, and going on, and so forth. So back in 2022, or with the backdrop of San Francisco and Oakland, Bellflower discussed 3 or 4 years ago the unutilized commercial properties tax, UCPT, in 2022. The goal of that was to encourage commercial property owners to fully utilize their properties and keep them in good repair. Effectively, this and the model that San Francisco and Oakland has adopted is just getting the property owners to do something with the property rather than leaving it just idle, really effectively raising the opportunity cost of owning that property idle in the city of Bellflower. The common issues that were addressed 4 years ago were the ongoing code violations, which would attract criminal activity, vagrants, your vermin, your fire, blight, etc., your ongoing code enforcement cases that we see throughout the year. There's above average utilization of city resources, kind of a strain on city resources trying to react to some of these challenges that we see with the vacant properties throughout the city. And of course, as we discussed last week, Monday, some of the challenges that follow from the vacant properties is they're a hindrance to the economic development throughout the city. The method in which the UCPT was calculated 4 years ago as it was presented, there was rather a complex formulaic calculus to bring this about. There was an estimate of law enforcement cost per vacancy. Back then it was about $4,270 or so. There was also, in addition to that, an estimated license tax cost per vacancy that was calculated by our finance department 4 years ago. An unutilized property tax, which was a loss of potential revenue, because if these properties are sitting idle, there is no reassessment of the value. And either a consultant or our finance department calculated that out. And we also took a per square footage of median sales of tax per square foot. The reason the median was used for that calculation is because there was a wide swing of, depending on the type of use it was, there was a wide swing. So we kind of calculated out that median level and multiplied it out by square foot. All to say, it was not as straightforward as the method in which Oakland or San Francisco utilizes, whether it's on a linear foot, square footage, or per parcel basis. Bellflower also did set a minimum of $5,000 and a maximum of $50,000 for the UCPT calculation. And so if we were to utilize or move forward with something like this, we would recommend that we move forward by choosing a simpler flat fee of some kind, something like the model of Oakland, kind of like I'm not sure if this is a right idiom, but copying the smartest classmates' homework, so to say. But nonetheless, the UCPT implementation that was recommended to the city council 4 years ago is that the city staff would take some sort of inventory on an annual basis prior to posting or levying said vacancy tax. Notices will be sent out to the property owners. This would be the administrative work done on by the city staff. Collection will be, there was an unfinished discussion regarding the collection of such vacancy taxes, and the three options that were provided to the city council back then was a tax to be made part of the property tax assessment at the time, or is the tax made part of the annual business license tax, which is a more complicated challenge compared to the property tax assessment, and establishing a time of year in which this tax will be put upon the property owners. Bellflower's exemptions was also simply, hey, is there a building permit there, and is construction really progressing with substantial compliance with the city's requirements not to exceed 2 years. And as you can see, that is also rather a light exemption compared to the 10 exemptions that Oakland modeled theirs after. And any other appeals that is not codified under that exemptions will be brought before the council for reconsideration. So before we move forward with this vacancy tax, there are some considerations for the city council, or to provide our city manager with some guidance. Number one, does the city council want this to be a general tax or a special tax? And secondly, how does the council want to package the measure? Meaning, how do you want to word the survey questions, and what is the council envisioning the exact ballot measure to read? Also, please consider the administrative burden of enforcing such a vacancy tax. To put into context, Oakland and San Francisco are huge, large economies that are able to tack on such administrative burden. I believe San Francisco may be the top 7 economies in the country. So these are some of the challenges that they could take on. Who in the city will be in charge of maintaining the vacancy data and ongoing compliance and updating, and the establishing of the administrative process and filing said taxes. But more importantly, please consider the critiques of such vacancy taxes as you see throughout the state. A lot of the times, the vacancies or the opponents of these taxes will say, well, the vacancies are not our fault. These are as a cause of the macroeconomic issues that are facing our region, our state, or whatever it may be. And as I mentioned in the first slide, some of the taxation methods may be a burden on smaller owners compared to those who are larger owners or companies or corporations. There's also the factor of the human error in identifying the vacancies and calculating this out, and staff time to define what the exemptions and the in-use definitions would be. There is also possible future litigation that may come about. Property owners, realty associations, businesses, individuals, including voters, they may come out and say, why is Bellflower doing this? And so these are all things to put into context and to put some thought into before we move forward. And so for the purpose of this study session, city staff is recommending if to move forward is choose a simpler method of taxation, kind of like Oakland, and also to consider all the questions up there. That concludes my portion of the presentation. I can answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My first question is maybe it's for the city attorney. What is the Ellis Act? Is it Ellis Act that you mentioned earlier?
Quite honestly, Mr. Mayor, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm just kind of.
I will tell you that
I came across that.
the parcel taxes that have been discussed thus far amongst these cities, I should add that it's a constitutional requirement that any parcel tax be treated as a special tax. That was added by Prop 218. So when we talk about parcel taxes, it's a requirement of the Constitution, not something that your charter can overcome, that it be treated as a 2/3 voter approval requirement on the ballot.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now, how it's being attacked in these other cities, I haven't looked at the case law with regard to those particular decisions, so I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay. All right. Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just since we're on that topic specifically, the cities that have been challenged is mainly on the residential side, right? I don't see any challenges so much on the commercial.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that's correct. It's a residential, the tax would have applied to residential, and what the city of Bellflower has been contemplating for the past 3-4 years is really about commercial parcels, not residential parcels. And I would encourage you to keep on going down that particular path.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for the record, I'm not trying to go after residential. It's all commercial. No.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Only commercial. Okay. I just wanted to get that
Okay.
on the record.
Can you show again the slide for the Oakland? Okay. And then show again what we did in 2022. I think you're right. It looks very, very complicated.
Yeah.
In
that was
20
In terms of the calculation methods, yes.
But I, for one, I don't think it's going to be fair to have just a flat rate per parcel. I think there should be some kind of method in terms of the square footage and things like that. And then should we make a distinction between a vacant lot versus vacant building? I think that's one thing we need to consider. Because I was kind of thinking that vacant lot, there is no property tax on the improvements, whereas a vacant building, at least they're paying some property tax on the improvement. So there's in terms of what goes into the city, there's a distinction between the two. So that's going to be my recommendation, is to make a distinction between a vacant lot and a vacant building. It might be complicated, but I think in terms of fairness, at least a vacant building is contributing something to the city. Right? Is that correct assumption?
Yes,
Okay.
it's taxed
Based on the
differently if there is a
improvement.
improvements
Yeah,
component.
okay. All right. Very good. Any question, Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something.
Councilmember Dunn.
First, I want to follow up on Councilmember Sanchez with the reason we're even discussing the vacant lot is because we know we have a lot of vacant commercial buildings and lots in town that cause blight. There's decades that some of these buildings have been just nothing happening. They seem to be in a portfolio somewhere of an out-of-town landlord. It's the only thing I could make up with it, and they don't see it. But the direction of why we're even discussing this is because of those parcels, whether they're commercial properties that don't meet the standards today. The building is dilapidated, don't have the electrical in it, and it was too small for the next business model to go in there, where it would require banking properties to get a bigger parcel. But I think this is why we're discussing and going down this road, is to fix a problem that we haven't been able to fix for decades with these vacant, dilapidated buildings that are just ugliness in our city. With that said, I noticed that I was going to come with one of the points of this is, can it be included in a business license tax? Because technically, some of these are commercial properties, and it's a business to lease them or what. And what I heard was there's a timing problem with, it's an annual business license based on when you start your business, or the business license is always July 1st, and it comes into effect for the following year. And I don't know if it's a mathematical problem with the finance department to figure it out. And if there's a vacant building, when do we enact the burden of a tax if we decide to do this and we get the public to vote on it? Do we enact it 12 months after we know it's vacant, or immediately? I don't know. This is discussion that we need to talk about. But yeah, there's got to be a simpler way to put a fee. And I'm not one of 100% recovery, because I think the slide of the formula was trying to get 100% recovery. I mean, I don't think we're here to do that. If we captured some nuisance fee for it at a time, it could be somewhere, in my mind, half of what there. And then maybe if it is in the business license tax or in whatever it is, with some kind of inflation guard on it for based with the CPI. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to share some of my thoughts that I've been thinking about.
Okay.
That's
All
it.
right. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Morse?
So, on the slide that was back with regarding Oakland with like 50 days vacancy, yeah, that one. So my concern would be, again, there's years of vacant lots and stuff, but in today's world, brick and mortar is not always just easy to, we saw during COVID, Lakewood Mall is a great example. We saw how it's never recovered fully.
Right.
So my concern is 50 days isn't very long. It's very to say, oh, you have to have somebody in that building. Or now again, 10, 20 years of blight. And I completely understand that, but I'm just a little unsure on the amount of time frame that we decide what's too long, what's reasonable, because
Correct.
it isn't easy to just put, and 100% would not want to go after residential. I want to make that clear
Right.
too, that this is the commercial side we're talking about, or vacant land that's just undeveloped or whatever. But yeah, I'm not, just a little concerned on those days that even, I'd even say some 9 months to a year might even be, depending on the type of business it is. I guess there's you have to have some kind of a window somewhere that
I guess we can make a distinction between a vacant building, again, versus vacant lot.
lot.
Vacant lot may take longer
Right,
to assess taxes, for example. Let's say I'm just throwing some numbers. Maybe 2 years is reasonable.
right,
And then maybe vacant building, maybe 6 months or 1 year,
right.
something like that, may be reasonable instead of 50 days. You
Yeah,
agree?
that just seems,
It's
50
very
days is around the corner
burdensome.
to us, literally, like tomorrow, it feels
correct.
like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be my biggest concerns at this moment. That's it.
All right, Councilmember Coops.
So we're all in agreement that, like Mr. Dutton said, that this is not an income producer. It's going to cost us money to administer this. In terms of, we may even need to add staff to be able to provide the information needed to process all this stuff. One thing, I heard a June election. Are we shooting for November or June? What is the time frame we're trying to get to?
It's
It have to be November.
So a couple of things. Number one, the county is proposing at this point a half-cent sales tax for the June election for their purposes.
Like 3 months from now.
Correct. That would capture the remaining quarter cent that's available. They're actually going to the state to get a statewide exemption to that statewide cap to propose the half-cent sales tax. So that captures that and sort of takes it off the equation. If the city at the same time in June were to propose some sort of sales tax, there's an argument to be made that our local sales tax would be preemptive if they were adopted at the same time. However, that's not what we're here talking about today. So with that sort of off the table, I think you're probably more reasonably looking at a November election for either one of these options, because that gives us time to actually prepare the necessary documents to move forward quickly. If you wanted to move in June, we'd have to move very, very fast, but we don't have to do that with either of these options. So you're probably more reasonably looking at November. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I always figured it was November, but then I heard June. I thought, well, maybe I'm missing the boat here.
That's too soon.
That's more of
It's an option.
why June was coming up as an option, because we had some of those other options we were looking at on the table. And I think now we've sort of narrowed it down to the two things we're looking at, which probably are more appropriate for a November election.
Would it be wise to engage Richard for
100%, yes, it would.
and that would give us enough, we could still make the deadlines if we utilize his service?
Yeah, for November, certainly.
Yeah,
For
okay.
June, it'd be very, very tight. Richard moves very quick, but I don't know if he can move that quick. So November, I'm fully confident. And we've already started that conversation with him to start gauging what that might look like and get some input from your residents as to,
Yeah,
where
I'd
they'd
like to hear
see us
what
go.
their feedback is before we go off the expense of an
Certainly.
election. because this is not an income producer, it's mainly to try to improve the lots that have been vacant for so long and the empty buildings. So if put yourself in the place of the owner of the property. He's going to say, okay, I've got this, it may become a line item on your tax bill, it sounds like. We have that determination to make, that we could make it part of the property tax bill.
So what you're discussing here ostensibly is a parcel tax.
Okay.
It's direct to the city, but it is a parcel tax.
And so
thus
that
a
would be,
two-thirds
it
tax.
could be on your property. We could assign it to the property tax bill.
Certainly.
We know we're going to get our money that way, as where if the other ones, it may not go as quickly
But that's
or
a
as
two-
easily.
You just said that's a 2/3 vote, though.
Yeah, parcel tax would be
That
a
ain't gonna
two-thirds
happen.
vote.
That's not
That's
gonna
correct.
happen.
Oh, all right, on the on the constituents, not on the council.
Yeah, and keep it, well, right, correct, thank
Yeah.
you. This is something I think most of you already know, but for the benefit of the public, a special tax in California is generally a 2/3 vote of the voters. A general tax, i.e. it's being used generally for things across the city, is a 50% plus one tax. Because this is a parcel tax, it's automatically effectively a special tax and therefore a 2/3 vote.
Now,
Yeah, like we've done
Yeah,
in the past.
All right.
Yeah, so if you did something in this regard, you would be looking at needing effectively 67% of the voters to approve that, which is why you see these two approved measures in the 70% range, which is also why the voter education piece of this and knowing where your constituents are with regard to this issue becomes critically important in order if something like this is going to be successful.
So do we, there was talk of it becomes more palatable if you assign it to a position of helping the homeless situation?
Yeah, I think when you all had discussed this in 2022, keep in mind I wasn't here for that, but I think there was discussion knowing that homelessness is such a priority issue in your community. If you said this is already a 2/3 tax as a parcel tax, making it and dedicating this to something specific, i.e. homelessness, because it's such a priority in Bellflower, might make it more palatable to the residents to say this is for this particular issue. Now, whether that's something you're trying to accomplish in this particular tax or not is entirely up to you, keeping in mind, as you've said, this is not a revenue measure for which we're ostensibly designating the revenue for a particular purpose. That may or may not be the intent of this tax itself. In fact, it may actually cost us money in order to administer this type of tax. For example, how do we determine, whatever you set that threshold at for that property is quote-unquote vacant, i.e. there's no business operating there in that commercial building for a period of time, whatever you set that period of time at, administratively we run into the same problem of showing that there is no business operating there for that particular time, which we've run into from the perspective of a conditional use permit, for example. It's difficult to show that sometimes. So all that to say, keep in mind there is an administrative side of this that is going to have a cost. But as you stated, the intent of this particular tax is not necessarily revenue. The intent of this is to say you have impacts as a vacant parcel or a vacant commercial building, and therefore we want to encourage you to do something more positive with your property. So you can go forward, as long as you're going forward with a clear understanding of that perspective, to understand there may not be a net positive revenue associated with this, but if that's not the intent, so be it.
So if we use Richard for polling, you'd get a whole different response if you said, would you allow a tax to defray the cost of homelessness? If people would be more responsive to that possibly than just saying.
Certainly it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, how would you have Richard, the way he words that question is going to determine the result.
Councilmember Coops, if I may jump in.
Yeah.
I think the survey that we conduct at that point would allow us to get a feel for different special needs within the city, that the residents would be more palatable. I do believe that there may be some fatigue around homelessness. We've had multiple measures in the last election cycles, and I feel that coming back and
That might,
focusing, we should ask the question,
Uh-huh.
right? We should ask that question, but I think that it might
It may not help the
it
situation.
may not. Yeah, there may be some fatigue around it, right? Because to a certain extent, let's think of it as ourselves. Well, we've been we've been told that this measure is supposed to do this and
Right,
supposed to do
right.
that, and
Well,
Yeah,
lost.
just like measure 8 and then
Right.
measure H8.
Yeah,
and
so
and then
when
measure
you're-
A,
yeah.
and then measure,
No,
measure
you may
A.
get some blowback on that, you know.
Right, and so I would say that we allow the experts in that arena to determine what are the
How it would
most
be
suitable,
worded.
right? And then I did want to follow up a question on yours. I thought my understanding of a special assessment or special tax would only be if the funds were going into for a special item. I thought if there was for general purposes, it could still be a general tax.
Yeah. Usually that is the case, but because this is a parcel tax, it is a 2/3 measure.
That's automatic.
automatic.
Automatic. That's automatic.
100%.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're 100% certain.
Yeah.
Even if this was put on the business license.
So
The
that's an
business license is a
interesting
general
question.
tax.
I
That's an
think that's gonna
interesting
be
question.
different.
And actually,
That's where I was going.
when you ask the question, it's a great question that I think probably needs to be taken in some context of where Anna's going to go with regard to the business license tax. And I'm going to preface her presentation. It might be worth going into that with this sort of that question in mind. Because when you're talking about a business license tax, she'll go into some detail here, but your business license tax, the way you have it structured at Bellflower, has been in place since at least the
89.
early 90s. And has not been updated since, while a number of cities around us, in fact, most of the cities around us, I would argue, have updated their structure of their business license tax to be more reflective of today's business environment. One of the ways we might be able to explore approaching this conversation is, for instance, through your business license tax, establishing a commercial lessor tax, for example, as part of the business license. In other words, as a lessor, you're conducting business in the city. By not leasing your property, you still have a commercial property to conduct business with. And we could establish, for example, maybe a minimum tax, or if you were to go to some sort of gross receipts business license tax, you have a minimum tax that says you're going to be this, or if you have gross receipts, it's based off gross receipts. The only people that would then be paying that minimum tax would be commercial property owners who are not renting their properties, right? And I'm spitballing off the top of my head as I'm kicking this back and forth with Carl when you asked the question. It's something that we might be able to explore, but I think it's probably, A, we run into some of the same challenges that we run into with this, and B, it probably needs a little more context from where Anna's going to go with regard to perhaps a holistic update on your business license tax. Keeping in mind, your business license tax, the purpose of updating that is perhaps a different intent and a different purpose than what you're talking about here. Your purpose here is non-financial. Your purpose in that is probably more a financial purpose. So it depends on what the council is trying to accomplish, what the community is trying to accomplish in those two things. They're really two distinct intents, but maybe can be combined in some capacity, and we'll probably have to hash that through a little bit more.
But before you go there, how would you attach a business license to a vacant lot?
As the commercial landlord, you're ostensibly conducting business in the city and therefore are subject to a business license tax.
Do we require a business license on a vacant lot? I understand the building, that was the
Not
previous
yet,
business.
yeah. I
but
think the
there's-
answer is not yet. You do not, as it
Okay.
stands currently in your business license code, which Anno can go into
Okay,
some of the
all right.
specifics of how you do that.
I'm just kind of curious about that. All right,
I'm not done with my questions.
okay, go ahead.
You guys took off with it.
I mean,
Yeah.
Victor interjected.
Hijacked.
No, go ahead. Yes.
No, I get it.
Yeah,
but-
go ahead.
So, back to, I'm the owner of a vacant lot parcel, and I see I'm getting taxed, and I think, I better develop it or sell it. Maybe I just ought to sell it. Now, does the new owner, is it like a CUP, that parcel tax runs with the property? Or does that isolate it from the original owner, and the new owner gets to start the time frame all over again?
Restarts the clock.
Right, because then I'm gonna sell it to my son and say, okay, give it back to me 5 years from now. Does that make sense?
I think, I think they're anxious to answer the question, right?
Did you have an answer for that? Yeah, Mr.
I'm
Coops.
just a for instance,
So-
you play musical property, with the ownership and just keep it in the family.
So, Mr. Coops, just as an example, let me just go back. If the property was to switch hands to a new property owner, some of the cities that have adopted this, there's possibly a grace period, and if someone was to switch hands and they bought this vacant lot, the purpose of them buying that would be to
Was
develop
develop
on
it. Yeah,
And so
That's what we want.
upon which, if that vacant or that grace period was to run out, then we would then impose this to them again. But again, that's why it's so important to define what that in use and the exemptions and vacancy means.
So I think what Wang Su's saying is the tax itself is not necessarily based on the ownership of the property. In fact, it's not at all. It's based on the use.
It runs with the property, no matter who
ostensibly.
owns it,
Yeah.
just like a CUP.
The idea is if it's been vacant,
Mr. Attorney, I said
Eh.
something, yeah.
No, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just a tag team on what Ryan is saying. This is not what you're talking about, spitballing, is not property-based. It is business-based. So
Okay.
from the standpoint of business license tax, the idea is to create a new category called commercial leasing or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter what the property ownership is, because the idea is that the category of the tax is for the business that's being conducted associated with the property. So it's not an incident of property ownership. That's very important, because otherwise it does become a partial tax. It's no longer a business license tax. So what we're spitballing, just again, completely
Okay.
off the top of our heads with regard to this particular category of use, is a business. It has nothing to do with an incident of property ownership.
Mr. Coops, I think your question was specifically related to this as a parcel tax. Does
Right,
it
but
run like
I'm
that?
going in the wrong direction.
No, your question is well taken as a parcel tax. Ostensibly, you're looking at the vacancy, not necessarily the ownership. So let's say that property, if you had it like the other example at 50 days, which might be a little bit unreasonable, but let's say for the sake of discussion, 50 days. If somewhere in that 50 days, the property transferred ownership, it's still been vacant for 50 days, and thus the tax still applies, right? Under this scenario. Under the scenario that we've sort of spitballed here, that question sort of is less parcel-based and more business-based, and thus kind of goes away.
But nevertheless, no matter what you want to call the item, you're going to get a bill for something, and that's going to have an impact on the value of my property. It's not going to increase it. It's going to diminish it. I'm going to have to allow for that in the purchase price, because the new guy who buys it, he's either going to have to develop it or continue to pay. Correct?
Jumped in.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, sorry for tag teaming since we're spitballing here.
Yep.
Really, it's an incident of business goodwill, so it's not associated with the actual price of the real property. It's associated with, if you're transferring a business, as you know, there's a business goodwill involved with that particular price. So if I'm going out and buying Coops Inc., then I'm not just buying the real property associated with what Coops Inc. owns, but I'm also buying the business goodwill associated with the actual business of Coops Inc. So what we're really talking about is adjusting the purchase price of Coops Inc., not whatever it is, 1344 Artesia, because that has nothing to do with it. Because if, as soon as you attach it to the actual price of the real property,
Okay.
it's now an incident of property ownership, which means that the California Constitution kicks in, which requires it to be a special tax.
All right, so then, because we want to develop, encourage development, would there be a chance for that, whatever we're going to call it, I'm afraid to say the wrong thing in terms of making it applicable, a reduction or our property, the fees that we incur when you build, would we be able to discount
I see where you're going.
what, say someone's spending in $10,000 and they sell the property, or they're going to develop themselves. Those fees that we have for park and art and development fees,
Development fees. Okay.
could there be a chance that, because again, this is not a revenue producer,
Right.
it's to encourage people to build, that we would give that back to them?
So I see where you're going. If someone, I mean, if the idea is to get that person to the table and get them to do something productive with that property, right?
Right.
Under that scenario, if they've come to that table, can the city council ostensibly develop a program whereby we work with that person to offset costs in the future? My suggestion in that regard would be two separate and distinct things. Number one, you have the vacant property tax, and then separately, as perhaps an economic development tool, you can establish maybe your business assistance program, that becomes a new tool under it. You can establish a program whereby previously vacant parcels that are now being developed are eligible for X, Y, or Z, whatever the council determines to be appropriate in that regard. In other words, the answer to your question is yes, you could develop a program like that. I would just suggest that those be two separate and distinct things.
And that can be part of the negotiation too.
Certainly,
Okay.
yeah, that can be part of that program going forward, just separate from the tax itself.
Well, I'm thinking about the White's Funeral Home property, which we know is going to incur city fees. If we had this program intact for the last 3 years while we've owned it, and it was vacant as a funeral home, and there may have been $15,000 or $20,000 worth of money that we've gotten in because it has not been utilized, would that money be able to be refunded to those that are now going to build on it?
I would say it this way: as you are a charter city, as the city council, that is a determination you are able to make if you so choose on a particular development going forward.
But it has to be equal to all. You can't say, well, you get it and you don't.
Not necessarily, but
Well,
I see the argument.
I think we're just looking for a lawsuit if we start pick and choosing who gets the refund.
We've been doing it.
Well, we've been doing that
for
We've been
years.
negotiating. We've been negotiating development fees.
It's all
It's
negotiation.
not
Let-
standard.
If, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I can just tag team on what Ryan has been talking about and the overall observation, which is twofold. One is we'd spitballed, well, we could tie this, a business license tax into into basically putting the money into a particular area. To Ryan's point, I think you want to be very clear in the difference between the revenue being collected under this theoretical category and how it's spent. If it's a general tax, you can spend that how you wish. And so if you choose as an economic development tool to have a fund set aside that happens to be funded with this particular tax revenue, that's certainly up to the city council. And as long as you create objective criteria by which people can tap into that particular fund based upon whatever project they're proposing, you can use it to offset whatever it is. When we talk about development impact fees, that is a completely different method of calculating and imposing fees. So the reason I'm making this distinction, this is general tax revenue as opposed to development impact fees. Now, if you choose to offset the fees with tax money, you can do that because you're now a charter city.
I've even thought about what Victor brought up, the homeless. We've worn our welcome out on homeless monies. Maybe we'd say for an animal.
I mean, dog catcher?
All right. Okay, let's hear from Anna. Maybe some questions may be answered with Anna's presentation. Anna, go ahead.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Happy Lunar New Year. It's so weird not having my mentor here with me. This is the first time I'm doing a presentation without him on my side, so please,
Be ready
go
with
easy on me today.
Be ready with your questions.
No, you're going to kill it. Don't worry.
At the Economic Development Study Session held last week, Council discussed evaluating the city's current business license structure, specifically business license door tax or license tax applied to rental units. The majority of the current rate structure was established by Ordinance 751, adopted in 1990, also year of the horse, which includes the tax on residential or rental units. The next few slides provide a holistic overview of the current business license program and outline potential updates to be considered in modernizing the city's business license structure given its age. As a recap, the city's business license tax serves as a revenue generating mechanism, not a regulatory tool. Its purpose is to fund general services that support the core operations of the city. All businesses operating within the city are required to pay this tax, unless they qualify for an exemption under the Bellflower Municipal Code. So I think this answers the mayor's question earlier. While adjustments are made annually each July based on the Consumer Price Index capped at 10%, the underlying structure remains largely outdated. Currently, the city has roughly 4,000 active fee-paying accounts with over 90% concentrated in just 7 license categories. As we review the current structure and its level of concentration, there is an opportunity to modernize the fee methodology and simplify administration, improve efficiency, and better align the city's revenue policy with the realities of today's business environment. This slide provides a high-level overview of the 5 of the 7 most common business license types. The purpose is to demonstrate how revenue is generated across categories and how those revenues compare under a potential 1% annual gross receipts framework. Beginning with retail, wholesale, and miscellaneous, this is one of the largest categories and also serves as the catch-all category for businesses not assigned to a specific classification. The current structure includes a $230 flat fee plus $3 per employee. Based on approximately 920 accounts and about 5,000 employees, this category generates approximately $227,000 in revenue annually. Under a 1% gross receipts model, each business would need about $25,000 in annual gross receipts to maintain existing revenue levels. Non-residential rental properties follow the same fee structure. With approximately 210 license accounts and over 330 employees, this category generates about $49,000 annually. Maintaining revenue under a gross receipts framework would require roughly $23,000 in average annual gross receipts per rental property. The residential unit rental category uses a unit-based fee rather than a flat fee plus employee count. It's $14 per unit currently. There are approximately 10,300 residential rental units, excluding TOT operators, reported under about 1,400 business license accounts, generating roughly $144,000 annually. Under a 1% gross receipt structure, each account would need approximately $10,000 in annual gross receipts to maintain current revenue. The 16 combined hotel and motel operators in the city with approximately 700 rooms are licensed under the same business license code as the residential rentals. This category generates approximately $10,000 in business license taxes annually and would require roughly $61,000 in annual gross receipts per operator under a 1% gross receipts model to maintain current revenue levels. Mobile home parks use tiered flat fees based on park size. There are 38 parks generating approximately $8,000 annually. Maintaining revenue would require roughly $21,000 in annual gross receipts per mobile home park. Continuing with contractors. In-city contractors pay a $230 annual flat fee, generating approximately $25,000 from about 110 accounts. Out-of-city contractors who purchase an annual license are licensed similarly and generate roughly $106,000 from about 460 accounts. Single job contractors pay a $58 fee per project, which is a quarter of the yearly fee, generating approximately $14,000 annually from about 240 permits. Under a 1% gross receipts model, in-city and annual out-of-city contractors would each need about $23,000 in annual gross receipts to maintain current revenue, while single job contractors would need roughly $6,000 per project-based account. The professional and semi-professional category includes 260 businesses paying a flat fee as well as additional employee-based components. The flat fee portion generates approximately $60,000 annually. Additional 950 professionals or semi-professionals at $81 per unit generate about $77,000, and approximately 1,400 employees at $3 each contribute another $4,000 in business license taxes. Combined, this category generates roughly $141,000 annually. Under a 1% gross receipt structure, the average business in this category would need approximately $54,000 in annual gross receipts to maintain revenue neutrality. Finally, home occupations represent a large number of small home-based businesses, with approximately 270 accounts paying a $104 flat fee. This category generates about $28,000 annually. Again, under a 1% gross receipts model, the average home-based business would need to generate roughly $10,000 in annual gross receipts to maintain current revenue levels. On the topic of evaluating the current business structure, this slide highlights several license rate categories that are administered in essentially the same manner as those under BMC Section 5.08020, retail, wholesale, and miscellaneous, despite being listed separately in the municipal code. Only a small number of businesses fall within these categories, and maintaining separate classifications adds unnecessary complexity. Staff recommends that City Council consider removing these sections and licensing the businesses under the catch-all, retail, wholesale, and miscellaneous rate category to simplify administration while maintaining consistent fee application. The first half of the slide identifies license rate categories that remain in the municipal code but have not been actively used for an extended period. While the classifications differ from the catch-all, they do not currently provide revenue value and have not done so for some time. Staff recommends that the City Council consider consolidating these unused categories into the catch-all rate to streamline administration and reduce the complexity of the business licensing process. Second, theaters and boxing or wrestling establishments are identified separately in the code and assessed on a per-seat basis.
How about axe throwing?
I like trained animal show.
I don't think that kind of business exists back in the 90s when the code was established.
Well, there's a lot of junk dealers in town that not have a license, obviously.
So the other recommendation is to standardize the per-seat licensing structure by either selecting an existing model or creating a new model that is applied consistently for both types of businesses. Lastly, coin-operated machines are currently taxed using different methods depending on denomination intake. Staff recommends applying a consistent 1% gross receipts methodology, which aligns with current practices for most machines and simplifies administration. These recommendations are primarily structural and administrative in nature and are intended to improve efficiency and clarity within the business licensing program. This concludes my section, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Anna. You're right about the business license fee structure. It's like a dinosaur. Look at the bowling alley. I mean, yeah, I agree. I think we need to make it a lot simpler in terms of administration. Yeah. All right. Any question for Anna?
I can't imagine the mayor of Shines paid $112 to shine shoes.
All right. So I guess you got your marching order for consolidation with other sections as you see fit.
Well, it wouldn't be as we see fit. Keep in mind, this is a tax. This would have to go to the voters as well. If you want to update your business license tax, this ordinance would have to go. So we would need that direction from you in order to push that forward.
But this is a general tax.
This would be a general, I mean, unless you designated the revenue for something specific,
it's
yes.
general.
But still
Ostensibly, this
50
would be a
plus
general
one.
tax,
50
yes.
plus one.
50%.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
All right.
And I know you all have talked about this concept from the perspective of, the primary business in Bellflower, one of the larger businesses in Bellflower being
Want me to put it on
residential.
my speech?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I
Please.
can do my
No, be-
speech.
You
Before
talked about it
you-
in that
before you go
context.
there.
My only point was to point out that that's part of this
Yeah.
business
Right.
license tax.
Can you explain your concept about the vacant lot? How we're gonna have it as a business license? How will that work?
Yes and no,
Okay.
because we're flying the plane as we're building it here. Carl and I are kicking back and forth how and if we can go about doing this. I think we need to hash that through a little further before we can definitively tell you that is a viable path forward.
Okay. Okay.
But conceptually, you'd be creating a category in here or amending a category in here to establish that within this general
Right.
tax.
That's why I'm making a distinction between a vacant lot and a vacant building. A vacant building, there's obviously a business license that existed before. So it's a lot easier to kind of administer that.
Potentially there is, yes. I mean,
Right.
there could be a circumstance where there is not, but
Okay.
certainly.
So you need more time on that to research.
To fully answer the question with any kind of
Yeah.
Okay.
definitive answer
All
for
right.
you, yeah, we'd
That's
have to
good.
look into
Okay.
that a little bit.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Dunn first.
Okay, go ahead.
I think what staff is looking is just a direction of where to go next. I've been looking at business license, as you all know, for quite some time now. There's things on this, in our business license that we don't capture that every surrounding cities have. And I was hoping in the staff report that there was something there, and I think us, with discussion with Ryan, that Paramount just did theirs.
Yeah, Paramount is or has recently updated theirs and has done a lot of research. And I only know this in discussions with their city manager. They have reached out for some context in ours. And the description we've received is, wow, you're one of the last cities that
Yeah.
does it under this method.
Just things to think about. There other cities capture business license tracts if it has a drive-through. There's certain things there, and we don't capture that because I don't think drive-throughs around in the 90s. But that's one thing. Another thing, I think some of them capture gas stations, and they do target those different and whatever. As you can see, this is pretty antiquated up here, but it needs to be researched on different categories and come back to
Right.
us.
And maybe some kind of comparison
Yeah.
against other cities.
Yeah.
What are they charging in the different
Yeah.
categories at the next report, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you all know I've been preaching what our industry here is in Bellflower is, and it's rental properties. That is our industry. Those are the, I want to be on record here, those are the ones like apartments and rental houses. And I lived in an apartment, and you don't have backyards, you don't have common space, a lot of them, unless they're newer. And where do you go for your kid's first birthday party? You go to the parks. You use our, the public services. And when you're in a high density apartment, and you're in an apartment because you're struggling for money or whatever, that's where, I hate to say it, but that's the demographics and the financial situations they attract in the problems, and they attract the sheriff. The sheriff, I bet if we, my gut feeling that more calls go to those high density areas for calls for service with the sheriff department. As we know, we have Eucalyptus Street, in our updates or whatever. It's around those areas, you hear people getting their gold taken away from them on the sidewalks around those high density areas. So we have an industry that takes a lot of, we pay for extra service other than this, single family neighborhoods. And I always looked at it as we have out of town landlords in this city and have a lot of business, and, we don't, get our due for putting up and paying extra to keep their properties, safe and exercising, and, their tenants go to the parks and whatever, and we, clean up. There's a cost there as a city. I think we need to be able to recover our fees from our industry of rental housing.
Okay.
And I always had a theory is there's a door tax on there, and when I started this, many decades ago, is the door tax, you can see it's $14. That's $1.25 a month. If we raised it, $8, which is about $100 a month, at 10,000 units, that's $1 million income for our city.
Okay.
Just saying.
Isn't there a separate presentation on the door tax earlier? Because you said two options. Is that from the get-go?
No, there's
The door tax part of the business license.
correct.
Okay.
It's always
Your
been-
door
it's always
tax-
been in there.
Yeah,
Because I thought there was a slide.
this
in
is
the
what I was trying to
beginning.
convey is we have talked about this in the context of a quote unquote door tax for
Yeah.
for a long time.
It's got nicknames.
It's really what it is a business license
Right, yeah,
tax
okay.
per door. And so it's structured in this. As we started to look at it as staff, we kind of went, wait a minute, if we're going to look at this one particular section of your business license, I would strongly suggest you're looking at it holistically to say we need to update our business
Yeah.
license code.
Okay. So
That's
it's the whole
certain-
thing then.
that's
Yeah,
Okay.
this
certainly
has to
an
go to the
area.
ballot anyway.
Right, anyway.
All business license goes to the ballot. Let's update everything on it and get up to date.
Okay, so for the sake of staff, in terms of direction, we're giving direction to do the review of the business license. So the tax is no longer on the table. that the consensus?
What are you
Sure.
talking
No,
about?
no, the separate parcel tax
Okay.
earlier.
I think we
I
ought to
said
have
no.
staff come back and utilize if we can put it in, put it in there, and then it's a general tax.
No, no,
If
no.
that's possible,
No,
they-
what I'm getting at is in terms of the special assessment
parcel tax.
parcel tax.
I have
Yeah,
even
we don't
made my
wanna do a
comments on
two-thirds
that
tax.
item, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
So you're saying one or the other for, well,
Well, because of the difficulty in passing the 2/3.
okay.
So do you want to take the chance of that
So-
failing, or go with the license?
Well,
with the
here's
business
my,
license?
since we're now on the business license, and I'll come back to my property accountability tax. What I would say is that in one case, we just talked about, making sure that it would be commercial and that we impact commercial, we activate commercial and ideally the goals would be to reduce blight and activate idle storefronts, right, that are currently empty. But on the other case, the door tax, whatever
Business license
business
tax.
license tax,
Business license,
which is
yeah.
per door,
Mhm.
is going to impact the residential.
Correct.
So I would not, again, for me, if I'm going to choose one or the other, it's about changing behavior, and the property accountability or the vacant tax, whatever you want to call it, which could be conducted in a different manner, as Councilmember Dutton's point, could be a vacancy registration ordinance, which might be faster for us, which might be a different process. And in that sample, there's ways of scaling the structures of the fees, where if 1 year registration is certain amount, $500, year 2 is $1,000, year 3 is $1,500. There's other ways of doing it, of doing the behavior, but I think we need to explore that option first, because it's not about. I don't think either of the second one might produce some revenue for us, but I think the first one is really the missing carrot that I think that we have. We've been focusing on improving the downtown, improving other parts of the city. We need to change behavior, and that's really finding a way to I'll call it a burden on the property owners who are absentee landowners, and that would be the route that I would go first.
No, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
My concern is, I want to get some kind of consensus in terms of the method of getting it implemented, because staff said that in terms of the special assessment tax, it's going to be a big hurdle to get it passed. Correct,
Correct.
staff? Are you? So my point is, I'm just trying to clarify that in terms of getting this passed, it's a bigger hurdle to pass it to a special assessment tax. Correct?
In
Because it's
terms
going to
of
be
getting,
two-thirds vote. Correct?
the parcel tax would
Yes.
be a 2/3 vote. That is a much bigger hurdle.
So what I'm getting at is, are we going to be in agreement to just focus
why-
on the business license as a vehicle to collect this?
Well, in my case, in my thought process, it's not about producing more tax revenue. What I would suggest then is that we at least let Richard go out and do a full survey and an analysis of these options, and then come back and have a presentation based off of data, not just necessarily of one direction.
And that's sort of why we're here today. The challenge in that, in all honesty, is to ask Richard and his team to go out and poll these questions. The goal of doing that polling is to get an accurate representation of where your constituency comes down on these issues. That can be, as you've noted, can be somewhat determined by the questioning and what we're asking and how we're asking it. If we overload those questions and we get you some answers and that data says this is potentially viable by this many, the margin of error, thank you, is this much. Depending on how we ask those questions, that margin of error starts to get a lot bigger, which may or may not give you an accurate representation at that point of where your constituencies actually are. That's the challenge from a polling perspective. So our goal as staff here today is, although we've narrowed it down to sort of two conceptual areas you wanted to focus on, they're really two very different things. In order to poll both of those, you probably muddy the waters a bit to get any sort of accurate analysis that you're looking for. So it's going to be very difficult to do that unless we can narrow it down. So I don't know if that helps answer the question.
I mean, I'll say that from my viewpoint, and I'm sorry if I'm misinterpreting it in any way, and I mean no disrespect to any of my colleagues. From one side, I'm looking at the first option is motivating and taking action on vacant property owners who are absentee landowners who don't live in our city, who don't actually are here. And on the other side, the option is to, let's just call it what it is. When we increase the business license fees on residential specifically or in general, that will be passed on to the consumer, whether it's a business license owner who operates a business but is not the property owner, or whether it's a tenant at one of these units, whether it's a mobile home park or whether it's a rental. I do not, at this point in time, would want to do that because it will get passed on to the consumer. So I would lean on the first option of focusing our energy on impacting those who have nothing but are holding our properties, are holding our city hostage with these 10-year, 20-year vacancies. I understand that, there's property rights and so forth, but at the end of the day, it's our city manager has a saying, and I can't say that on public record, but it's, either do something or get off the pot.
Paint or get off the ladder.
Yeah, thank you. Paint or get off the ladder. And I'd rather go that direction, and that's my personal take.
Okay, yeah. Any other comment? Okay, you got the direction there?
If you could.
Do the poll. Do the poll.
Do the poll and then come
Right?
back to us.
Wouldn't you be happier when you know
Come
the
back to
results of the
us.
poll give you a little more confidence on what you're talking about? Right.
I believe that there is an appetite from our constituencies to remove these blights. We get
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about it.
So I
There's no
think
doubt about
to
it.
the city manager's point, it's about how we message it and how we convey it and how we deliver it. If I think that's important.
I want to be clear when I'm asking Richard and his team to go out and do some polling for us. What we're asking them to do would be pull out a vacant parcel tax, independent.
Then do 2 polls, I guess.
Yeah, that's
So
what I'm getting
that's
at.
going to be two basic questions.
Yes.
Vacant property and then the business
Or-
license.
And what I'm suggesting to you, having had conversations with Richard and his team thus far, is that's going to get very muddy in that polling. It's going to be very difficult to poll. Because we're not asking your constituency, where are you at on this issue? We're sort of, where are you at on this issue and where are you at on this issue? And those two things, you may find fatigue in those two things. So it's going to be very difficult to get accurate polling from which you can base a decision of how you go forward. As long as we understand that, we can ask him to do anything we need to do, but I want to be very clear.
How long has it been since we had a poll where we're always interested in hearing from the constituency how the council's doing? How do you perceive the city?
That's every 2 years.
So it's been 2 years since we did that?
Yeah, it's probably been about 2 years since you did that.
So would it muddy the water to incorporate what we're looking for now to do with that? When people are asked about public safety and dogs and
We
cats
always
and-
do that pretty much in every survey that we do. We ask those general basic set of
It's about-
questions. So
it's about
you'll have some of that.
Have we done it? You've been here 2 years. Have we done it since you've been here?
Yes, we did it as part of your strategic planning process.
Okay.
And to Councilmember Sanchez's note, one of your residents' primary concerns in that was the affordability of housing, the ability to afford a place to live. Ostensibly, when we're talking about door taxes, that argument, I think, is going to come up. There is an option for the council, if you wanted to take it, that you could adopt ordinances. Let's say you were to adopt a door tax or a parcel tax of some sort. For that regard, that it's established a specific door tax, you could, as the council, adopt an ordinance that doesn't allow a property owner to pass that along to residents. Now, enforceability of that may become a question, but you can adopt that ordinance if the council so chooses to give that protection in that.
Yeah.
So, something to consider as well.
Okay.
Well, the state of California has some pretty strict guidelines about rent increases, so it's pretty much protected.
Yeah.
It's because every landlord is going to do the max no matter what.
It's controlled anyway. so.
It's controlled
Yes.
because
Yep.
that's what happens now.
Mhm.
Am I right?
Yep.
Property owners.
I don't increase my
It's
rent.
it gets done at the max every year.
Well, look at all the rules
Yeah,
that
so-
pandemic put out when we couldn't evict anybody for a year, and now they want to extend it to 6 months before
Yeah.
you can evict. I mean, these are all taking
Yeah.
away the values of our properties.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be the max no matter what. It's just that is life. So the people that were getting a good deal don't get a good deal anymore. The good people that you took care of.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Consensus-wise, are you okay with doing the survey?
I am okay with doing the survey. I think we ought to do the survey.
Right.
May I, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
In the meantime, I think we ought to come up with some kind of ideas of numbers of certain revenue type of things, whether it's the business license or ideas of the vacant property tax. And I think maybe staff ought to do a windshield tour and kind of catalog how many we got out there, and maybe figure out how many linear feet total out there if we're going to go that route. That's linear feet seem to be the easiest, as I recall.
Do we know how many vacant commercial properties are in Bellflower? Or vacant lots?
There was a general idea that I think Jim had at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Jim to come up for a
That
second,
ought to be
keeping
all
in mind
compiled.
the data that he is going to generally discuss with you is at least 4 years old at this point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But we did do that, back of the envelope windshield survey when you discussed this previously.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Back in 2022, when we presented the vacant property tax to you, we had 122 total vacancies comprised of 9 vacant lots. And so the rest were commercial building vacancies. At that time, there were 15 Bellflower owners, which was about 12% of the total, 30 unknown ownerships where they were located. They had the same commercial address or Bellflower P.O. box, so you kind of didn't know where the actual owner was located. And then 77 out-of-town ownership. So when I presented last week in the economic development study, that's why I went from 63 to 88% of the properties are vacant, because we don't know what that little bit of where those owners are located. But we had 122 back in 2022. So we'd go out there and do another similar walking tour and windshield survey to try to find out how many we have now.
That's a big number.
A lot.
Yeah. Okay, any questions, Jim?
No, but some additional comments. I'm trying to clarify a little bit. I think there's 3 options for us. And unless I'm understanding it incorrectly here, I think that for the property tax, vacant tax, there's a way of doing it where it's a vacancy registration ordinance, which is in-house, doesn't require a tax. That's just a straight ordinance where vacant properties have to register with the city. And I think that's one option. Correct me if I'm mistaken.
Yes, you can do a registration process. That becomes not a tax at all at that point.
Right.
That's a fee, and would require, just as any of other fees do, a very detailed analysis as to how we appropriate that fee. Some of which you've ostensibly done on some level previously, although it would have to be more detailed than that, because you'd have to have the nexus between the impact and the fee itself.
Right.
And
order
that
to
goes
charge
before
that
the
fee.
voters also?
No.
That one does not.
That would be something coming straight to you guys, but we'd have to maintain that as any other fee that we do. We'd have to do that fee study on a regular basis in order to justify that fee and establish the nexus between the impact and the fee itself. In other words, it has to be a cost recovery base, not
an income generator.
income
Right.
generator.
And again, that goes back to the concept that on the vacant properties, it's not about generating revenue. It's about it's about improving the properties and getting them off of vacancy. So I think we can all acknowledge that some of these properties sit vacant because for example, the lease requirements are so stringent, right? They want too much for that little parcel. There's just things that need to be changed from an owner standpoint so that we don't have these vacancies. Then the second option is the property tax, which have to go to the voters. It'd be a special parcel tax, right? What I'm trying to get to is that I think that those 2 options need to be explored, because we could do one or the other. And then in that case, do we do an ordinance? And I'm not trying to muddy the waters here, but do we do an ordinance for the vacant property taxes? And then do we pursue a tax on the doors, right? So I'm saying we could possibly get both items at the same time if we were to go that route. Again, I'm just spitballing here.
Councilmember Sanchez, I'm actually going to let Anna jump in here for a second, because I think it might help answer some of what you're talking about from a fee perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the fee goes for vacant and abandoned property, we already have that fee. I have it up there. It's currently at $389. And this fee is increased annually.
What does that increase to annually?
It depends on the CPI.
So The question becomes not necessarily do we need to have a fee. The question becomes do we need a fee study in order to accurately determine what the current costs associated with the impacts of that are, and thus potentially or not an adjustment to the fee up or down, whatever it might be.
Can we have multiplier effects? Like if you've been registered for 1 year, it multiplies for the year 2 and so forth?
I
would ask
will-
the legal counsel on that.
I will, sorry.
I would say you have to have some nexus again between the impacts. So ostensibly, we'd have to show that there is an impact by a continued vacancy. In other words, a long-term vacancy is more impactful than a vacancy yesterday, right?
It's a cost recovery still.
Because it's a cost recovery question.
Okay, so then that's out the window. All right.
No,
so-
not necessarily, because that's part of the study in 2022, right? In terms of coming up with the logic, that was partially based on cost recovery, right?
Yes,
For-
I think when you did the study in 2022 on your, I'm probably saying it wrong, underutilized commercial property tax, you did some form of this
Right.
analysis.
It's a portion of that.
Yes,
Mhm.
I would say certainly if you wanted to go forward with something like this, that would need to be updated and refined pretty significantly. And to your point, it's not necessarily out the window. An argument could be made that a property that's sitting vacant for an extended period of time requires additional code enforcement efforts on an ongoing basis. You just had a code enforcement case that's taken 13 years to get to
Right.
that point and has extensive costs associated with it and staff time and effort. And as the mayor pointed out during that process, much of our time simply wasn't charged in that process. There is an impact to long-term vacancies. Perhaps that impact is less for a short-term vacancy,
Sure.
and thus that argument maybe could be made.
Okay.
Okay. Any
Here-
other que-
Well, the concern I have, how do you determine what a vacant property is? I think about Martin Howard's 4-restaurant building over there. Is that a vacant building? Or is it having activities done in there that aren't sanctioned by the city? Is that vacant?
Code enforcement slap.
Now, is the old pool hall vacant? That building, it's vacant.
It's
Now,
vacant.
there ought to be something there. I think about our girlfriend up there with the vacant Chipotle, all the equipment's there and the Edison's not there. That's a vacant building. The wings that went out, that's a vacant, she's got a bunch of stuff there that's never been occupied. And she's just barely making it.
Wingstop was occupied for 2 weeks.
Well, thank you very
mean,
much.
wing-
All right, but now it's vacant, right? Now, you understand how?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, how do you keep track? Now, if you look at that fee up there at $378, I owe that because my building was empty a year before I rented it. But I didn't know I had to come down here and pay $378.
I don't think we have any of those on the books. I mean,
All right, but that- you
it's
understand
there,
where-
but I didn't know that.
That's
we
why,
could-
to the staff's point, I mean, it's
How
gonna
do you
take,
administer that?
it's gonna take more effort to enforce this.
Correct.
No, but if I put a
these-
guy in there selling a
so-
vacuum cleaner for 2 days, I'm occupied.
So
And
it's
a-
not an income generator, actually.
Anna can correct me if I'm wrong, but these are on your books as it stands. But the point
what I
is
thought.
well
Enforcement.
made. The administration of this, of any of these options, becomes very, very challenging, and there's a heck of a lot of nuance involved in that. So it's going to be a challenge.
All right. So are we kind of in agreement to at least explore this with Richard and come up with a survey with Richard? I think that's the first step. That's what we need to do. Correct?
Certainly, I agree with that. What I would suggest then is let us come up with some specific questions that we can ask.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We'll work with Richard to do that.
All right.
And if need be, we can come back before you and see if those questions fit what you're trying to accomplish. Because I
what's
think
our
we need to
timeframe?
identify specific questions.
To get it on November ballot, what do we have to
For-
perform at what time?
We got plenty of time.
For November, if you were to put these things on November, you do have a little bit of time. Obviously, the more time we have, the better. As Wang Su pointed out, with some of these things, an extensive education effort is required. The more time we have to do that, the better these things often go. An example is your sales tax efforts. Generally, we spend a lot more time than we will have in this. But that's not to say these are inviable if you don't,
Mr. Mayor,
move now.
I would ask, if I may, Mr. Wong Soo Lee, have we answered your questions? You had 5-6 questions out on your presentation that you wanted some answers to, and I don't know if we got to them.
I think they were sufficiently
I
covered.
think we did.
Okay.
And also, do we need to have another study session to continue this discussion? Because I want to see how other cities are charging their license fees, so to
Business
speak, a
license.
comparison. And then, are we missing any other areas that other cities are charging license fee and we are not?
Oh, I would
Yeah. something
Off
like
the
that.
top of my head, my answer to that question would be a 100% yes. You
Okay.
are missing some areas, and they probably have some extra areas that other cities don't have currently because the world's changed.
Right, exactly.
So, Most
I'd
certainly,
like
yes.
to some kind of comparison with other cities.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think this study session has developed more questions than answers.
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
As these things often do.
Exactly.
What
Well,
I
at
would-
least we can agree on one thing. We're gonna do a survey, at least, right?
Yeah,
We're gonna do a survey. So I
we
think
could have
we
done
can-
that the first 5
I
minutes.
think we can
Right.
agree on something.
Whether it's a study session or at one of your regular meetings is entirely up to you all, I suppose. But
Well, we want to be here till 1:30 at least.
what I can do is try and craft those questions rather quickly,
Mm-hmm.
come back to you all in some format at a regular meeting or at a special meeting if you want. Present you with those questions, make sure that they actually, drive towards what you're trying to accomplish, engage the voters with, and bring you some data with regard to the business license. That's what I'm
Correct.
hearing. At least a comparison level
Yeah,
data.
exactly. Anything else you want the staff to do for the next meeting about this, on this subject?
Just some information regarding the business license, which you alluded
Right.
to, of how, what we're not capturing or whatever, and what potential income that would be,
Correct.
for that.
Okay.
And the viability, if we merge that with, or merge the vacant land building ordinance into the business license, the viability, maybe, gets a little closer of an inventory of what's out there. And if we were going, I think, mentioned the most less complicated one was linear foot is what up there. Maybe we ought to get some stats, an estimate of linear foot that's out there. Then we would know what a
Correct.
revenue would be.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez, any other?
No, I think we're moving in the direction that we
Okay.
need.
All right.
Got a lot of
Councilmember Morse,
unknowns.
anything else for
unknowns.
staff? Councilmember Coops?
I'd like to know if we're really getting all the apartments that are subject to a tax if they're on the books.
Or rentals? Any
Or
rental?
how many, are the rentals that are in town really on the books?
Mhm.
Is a 50 unit really a 50 unit, or is it 75?
All right. Staff,
And
are
I was
we,
just
are,
telling
are
you,
we clear
we
in
have
terms
some
of the
data.
next step?
Yes,
Okay. All right. Any question for us?
plenty, but we'll come back.
We'll come back, I'm sure.
That's why we pose
Just
more
like,
questions. then.
yeah, exactly. Okay, very good. So that concludes item 5A, correct?
Right, now we're moving on.
Before we go to item 6A, can we take a 5-minute health break?
Nice. Yeah, I'm in.
So you want to reopen the? Okay. All right. We are reconvening the. Oh, we just reopen now. Okay, we are reconvening the meeting at 10:34, and there's a request to reopen item 5A. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to, do we need a motion for that?
No, just reopen.
Okay, so I just, as I was in my health break, I was processing this a little bit, and I think that, we've been successful as a city and as a council and as a, with staff and everything, when we are a little bit more concise in our decision-making. When I think it's too broad, I think I think what may happen is kind of what happened in 2024, which was we didn't end up getting anything to the ballot in time. I won't point fingers on that, but
You just did.
I think that in all seriousness, I had to crack the joke. In all seriousness, I think that we are way more effective when we set our minds to a singular item, because it allows us our ability for staff to be focused and for staff to at the end of the day, their bandwidth, right? They don't have the bandwidth to be so broad. And I think that's one of our specialties as a smaller city, and that's why we have been successful within the last decade and a half, almost 2 decades. So with that said, I'd like to see if we can entertain a conversation about deciding on one of these 2 pathways and let staff to focus on those 2. Do you want a motion for which direction I would like to see, or?
It's just a consensus. We don't need a formal vote at
consensus.
this time. So the question is, are we going to be focusing on just the business license or the what do you call the
The
first one?
property
The
accountability
property
tax.
accountability tax. Do you want both or one of the two?
Or a hybrid.
Or a hybrid.
Well, hybrid is going to be two. I think
That goes
that's-
back to the broadness.
I think to Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez's point, it's just basically it's either one of the two.
And,
be
and
more,
for now,
to be more focused.
for now,
for now.
and then there, in 2 years we
Yeah.
can revisit another one.
Okay, because he was the one pushing for that earlier. So anyway,
Okay.
let me start with Councilmember Morse.
Okay, so I would just like to say, I am concerned that we haven't looked at the business license since 1990. Those fees haven't changed. So I would, that with that concern though, I would lie more with the parcel tax over the business license. But I do feel somewhere that needs to be looked at.
So in terms of doing the
Yeah.
survey,
Yeah.
For the parcel, the vacant lot,
the vacant
the
lot.
vacant lot parcel
Okay,
tax
only for now. Okay,
for now.
vacant lot. Okay, Mayor. Mayor Emeritus Danton.
It's been a long time since I heard that.
I know. I know.
I would like to do the business license tax. It's antiquated. You know, over 25 years ago, that it was done. I believe that there's probably 1.25 million in revenue that we're missing at a minimum from the business license tax. But I really would like to incorporate it into the, add to it is the vacant property and vacant business, because it goes in that category. How it's done, I don't know, but that would be another avenue. It's included into the business license. I feel that when something gets voted on, unless you read the support or arguments against it, which no one hardly does, only people, a certain amount of people that do. You can get that in there, and it's until you dissect something. A business license is so complicated in a way of what things it targets. There's so many different revenues, and I think it makes it fair to the city of drawing income for managing these items that are in the business license tax. I just think it's a better way, and I think we should be able to get both. And when you poll whatever's picked here today to go after, when you poll for it, you're just polling on a business license tax. I've heard nicknamed a door tax. It's not a door tax. It's a business license tax. Mm-hmm. And it just happens to have a lot of doors in there. That's our industry. But it's got to be updated. And I think my colleagues would be surprised of how many different entities in a business license that are charged differently. As business people up here, you only know what your business license is that you renew every year. But there's a lot of different things, from the professionals to how many employees you have. It's just all kinds of things of how you're charged. Every business is completely different. It's a business license tax, and it's pretty darn antiquated. And I've looked at what other cities had over 10 years ago, and I've investigated it a lot, and I think we're very far behind on what we do with our business tax and how we charge businesses. That's it.
Okay. So you're going to opt for the business license
Yeah.
at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll say this. I think that the goal is, again, reducing, in this case, blight, activating idle storefronts, and the means in which it can be done staff can work on that. But so with that said, though, the focus should be on getting these properties going. So I'm leaning towards the vacant property tax.
So on the vacant property license, whatever it is, or tax, it doesn't have to go to the voters. There's a way not to seek approval from the voters, right?
You have I'm going to call it a registration fee.
Yeah,
I don't
registration,
know what the exact
okay.
title is, but
Okay.
there is a way to adjust that fee it would require an appropriate fee study to establish what the costs associated with that are. That adopting that fee would not have to go to the voters. That is something the council could adopt, but it would require that nexus to the costs associated with that.
Yeah,
A fee study, thank you.
Right, as mentioned by Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez earlier, we've been very successful if we're focused on just one thing in terms of doing the survey. So my point is we can always go back to the vacant property registration fee later on at some point in time without muddying up the water in terms of the survey with Richard. So anyway, so I'm leaning towards doing the survey on the business license at this point.
May
So-
I add something
Yeah, go ahead.
on what you said and what Ryan was saying? The fee is cost recovery as we update our fees, parks,
Right.
rental hall fees, business, the building planning to fees. So here's a good example. The franchise fee that we did for CR&R at the last contract.
Mhm.
And Lynn, if you got any questions, Lynn had to figure out what all those fees are. We were getting the franchise fees, and I think we added $1 million to franchise
Right.
fee in revenue. And he was able to go in and extrapolate of everything that trash truck does going down the street, wear and tear on the streets. There's all kinds of stuff and that's how you justify it. And it doesn't, nobody votes on it. It's cost
Right,
recovery.
right.
Those trash trucks tear up our city, obviously. And so we got recovery that to be able to put in the pot. Where we know, if we go down the fee schedule portion, like you said, that's cost recovery. And you just, with like code enforcement, like the Virginia and Artesia property, for example, came up here, the $83,000 that they ended up owing us. And we're, trying to get collected. Those kind of fees you can attract, and then you just have it there, but you have to register. People got to we need to be proactive and say, by the way, you've been vacant for 5 years. It's time to pay your fee, and then start educating people to do that. There's going to be a lot of labor in there to get these people on, which I'm not against. There's going to be labor on the front end, and then eventually it catches up to yourself when you have whatever fee we decide. If we go down the road, the fee schedule for the vacant properties and collect that, it's the cost recovery
Yeah,
of it.
right. So since that's a discussion, are you thinking about having a separate tax for the vacant property or just basically recovery fee? Because that makes a difference in terms of whether we should do the survey or not.
Mr. Mayor,
Correct?
my thought on it is the focus point is that the end goal is activating, getting people off these properties or getting them to do something. It's changing the behavior,
Okay, so.
right? Versus the way I'm seeing my decision tonight or today this afternoon is that's one decision. The other decision is, do we analyze an antiquated business
License
license,
fee.
right?
License fee schedule.
schedule
Mhm.
to generate revenue. So those are the two items that I'm deciding between. And if there's a way to do both,
Well,
power to staff.
I think you just nailed it with
I
the fee,
think- I
though, the
think
more I
there-
think
there's-
about it.
Yeah.
There's to do both without the tax. If it's not a tax on the vacant property, we can do it as a cost recovery, but it's going to be a small amount, not the full.
Well, then why can't we do both? We're not going to the voter for both
That's
of
what I'm
them.
getting at.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. So
Yeah.
we can just basically focus on the business license. If the goal is not to generate revenue but to change behavior,
Right.
we can do both.
And
at the
do
same
that
time.
immediately. We
Right,
don't have
we
to
can do
wait
it.
for a vote and then so many months after the vote to enact
So the
it.
survey can just be focused on the
Immediately.
license.
It could be immediate, the citizen survey, but back to the vacant property, that could be immediate. If we
Right.
decide today to do it,
Exactly.
the staff gets ready, does their analysis of what the fee costs, and then we just go to have a council meeting and we adopt it. That's the fee, and then we send out door
We could have
knockers
that going
to
by
vacant
1st of
pro-
July.
And
Yeah,
maybe,
you
maybe
can
late-
immediately get that into
right,
work.
exactly. And maybe later on, if we feel that it doesn't change behavior, then we're going to go for a tax. That may be an option in the future.
I put it this way, if the council gave me direction today to go do that fee study, we could get that started and get that moving if that's something you wanted to do.
Does that help bring this in for staff so that you guys may be successful?
To the mayor's point, ostensibly, I wouldn't need a survey in order to do that. If that's the council's desire to go explore what that looks like, we can do that study, bring you back a fee study that shows you those costs that you may be able to recover in doing that. It's entirely separate from doing a survey of your voters to determine what what their priorities are as far as, you know, how they want to go forward. So to the mayor's point, you probably could do two
We can
things
do both,
simultaneously.
exactly. Mhm.
My concern is when it becomes public knowledge of how we sold the paintball park, people aren't going to be jumping on board to want us to take more money of their taxes. They'll
Well-
say, you guys got enough money
Well, that's why it's a cost recovery for the vacant lot. for
on the
now.
vacant lots. But I mean,
Right.
I'm back to what Mr. Dutton talked about. They say you're going to change it. You guys got money in the bank. What are you doing now?
Well, that's why what's going to be helpful is if we have this survey of comparison with other cities.
No, I get it,
Then
and I
we
know
have-
it
we
needs
have
to
a
be
right-
done, but I think that there's gonna be press on this at some point when we make the final transaction.
A lot of money. Potentially.
Anyway, but I'm just looking to the future. How will a constituent respond to say, listen, you got this money from the sale of this. How much more money do you need from us?
I guess what I'd offer in that regard is what the conversations that Metro is having with us in that regard, you already have an asset there in that property. In other words, the asset has value as it stands. That's not a gain to the city. At least we're not talking about that in a gain to the city because you're trading an asset for dollars in your pocket. Ostensibly, what that money, presuming that comes through in some capacity, allows you to do is go and replace that asset that you already have for the
So we have an
community.
idle asset and we're gonna get an active asset when we,
Well,
potentially.
It's not, I mean, the paintball is not a tax. that
no,
we're
but I'm
getting
looking
from-
at the income stream of what comes from that versus what the potential is for the sale. You know, it's true that it's an asset, but one's a dormant, one's gonna be very active. Anyway, I'm just talking pie in the sky.
Right, okay. So anyway, are we okay with just on the license?
I think we do, now that we know that we can do a study on
So
ourselves
just
here.
focus on the license?
If that's the direction the council wants to go, I guess the direction I would seek would be, number one, focus the survey on an update to the business license, but I would also like direction to go forward with a fee study or to bring you back a contract for a fee study to study our registration fee specifically.
On vacant lot.
Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor,
if
to
the council would
reiterate,
give that
Right.
direction, that'd be great.
to reiterate, the focus, the North Star is the mobilization of these vacant properties.
And that could be.
If this business license is a means, then that's fine, but it's not the end goal. Does that
Right.
make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah,
I think we should
Right,
be,
not the
okay.
end.
we should be
No,
clear.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think we could have your
Because it may flop.
suggestions,
Right.
we could have a bill out by July.
Yeah.
Whereas the other thing, we're gonna vote on in November, and it'll go in next January.
Right, which is why the direction to staff should be the North Star, we gave them that, it's mobilize these properties, get them activated, get them going. However we do that, and if it's through the business license fees, then okay, great, so be it. But let staff determine that and let staff work on it. Is that good enough?
I mean, that's a direction to start
Yeah.
anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I
we're
mean, we
good.
can take that as direction.
And you
The-
don't need a survey to determine that.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I mean, that may be an element of what we're trying to accomplish. From the perspective of a fee, what the fee does is recover the city's costs associated with the impacts of that vacant property. And one could argue that there are negative impacts associated with that vacant property, and thus
Yeah.
the fee addresses those impacts. And if
Okay.
that, by extension, encourages a property owner to do something good with that property, great,
So be it, yeah. Okay. Are you okay with that? Then-
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay, Ray?
Wow.
We're good?
Unanimous?
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, we're done with 658.
No, I think both of you got what you were looking for.
Yeah, well, no, it's like, seems a lot easier.
All right, moving along. 6A, Mr. Smoot.
We may find out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they said they were, the mayor suggested he was going to pull this off of consent
Yes,
for discussion earlier.
Are we going to pull
Yeah.
this item, right? Okay, it's on consent calendar, so
If you don't, I will.
I'm going to pull the item.
For discussion.
All right. Let me start with, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask Wang Su to go ahead and kick off his presentation on this item.
We don't have a presentation on the consent item.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
the
pull item. We're gonna
mayor's
pull the
mayor's
item.
going to pull the
I'm
item
pulling
for
the item.
discussion.
Well, let's
Okay.
talk about that.
All right, thank you so much for Mr. Wangso.
Thanks for clarification.
I'm very impressed with the staff report, and then you made the correction on the working capital, and you gave us a corrected page, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How many,
Okay.
how many years they gotta
Okay.
operate?
So my only question here is, it's very clear to me, and one of the questions that I have is, as was asked by Larry earlier, in terms of the deposit, how will that work out in terms of, if you look at page, is it page 12 on the bottom? On the bottom, the amount, the new dispensaries which is underlined must prepay an amount equal to 1/4 of estimated cannabis taxes prior to the issuance of CBP. So before you answer that, in response to to the question from Larry, my thought is, in terms of making a deposit for the first quarter, for example, that will basically temper any applicant to kind of give us a estimated revenue, a pie in the sky, because that will kind of bring them down to earth when the cash comes in. Because I can, and a permittee, my concern is a permittee will give us a revenue that is so high, and that just to get the permit, and when it comes to the cash involved in terms of deposit, that will kind of bring them down. So to reality. So I think that's I kind of agree with that concept, because if there's no cash involved as a deposit, then again they will just overinflate their revenue to get the permit. So that, to me, that's a reality check. But can you state the process? So for example, let's say we open this up, and then an applicant comes in, and we gave this applicant the permit, and the applicant said that I can open the business in 9 months. So in the first cycle of the permit, how many months we, considering that all permits are renewable at the end of in December, how many months are we gonna give the permittee for the first crack at it initially? Is it 1 year, or is it gonna end in December? Just kind of play it out.
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest, sorry, Wongso, I'm going to jump on you here. I would suggest you issue these permits traditionally as a 1-year permit. You do all of these together, the renewals, you do all of them together in December. I would suggest that we maintain that schedule so we don't get on a, we don't add one in the middle of the year just because somebody's starting in the middle of the year.
Right.
So in other words, you're issuing it through December 31st of this year, and then they can apply for a renewal like anybody else.
Okay, so for example, let's say we give the permit in, let's say, May of this year. So the permit will be valid until December.
Correct.
Okay, and they guarantee us that they will have a 1-year guarantee, 1-year revenue, correct?
Yeah, the way I think we would approach that 1 year of revenue is a 12-month revenue picture, right? Now, that's an entirely separate question from whether the council is renewing that for the additional period, or for an additional period after that, or an additional period after that. But you're bidding on what does 12 months of operation look like under your business. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
okay.
regardless of when that 12 months starts or ends, what does 12 months look like for you?
Right, in terms of giving the permit. But in terms of actually earning the revenue, so for example, again, going back to my example, we give the permit in May of this year. And basically, after 6 months, we start collecting from the permittee the license fee, whether they're open or not. Okay, I mean the taxes. So they're going to be paying starting from month 7. We're going to be collecting at that point, which may be in November, correct? And here comes renewal in December. So how it's going to play out at that point?
I can't answer that question because you issue these on a 1-year basis, you're not issuing an ongoing permit, and I wouldn't suggest that you issue an ongoing permit. So yes, as that person comes back to renew, ostensibly that permittee would be applying to the city council for a renewal, and they would be able to say, hey, we projected this much on a 12-month basis. In our first 1 or 2 months, we've met that And we expect to continue meeting that going forward. So the council at that point, as part of that renewal decision, can say, we expect you to keep up that pace. And as a condition of your renewal, you're going to keep that up, if the
And-
council wants to.
And I'm assuming that at that point in December, so for example, let's say they haven't done a thing in terms of applying for a CUP or doing some kind of construction, we have the option not to renew the permit in December. If
Certainly,
they haven't
you
done
have-
anything, that's gonna be
You
an
always
option.
have that option, certainly.
Okay, so just to clarify this point here, in terms of the 1/4 estimated cannabis taxes prior to the issuance of the CBP, so will that be ongoing, that they have a deposit of 3 months? Or
Mr. Mayor, for that,
just the initial
that
one?
will be for the initial new CUP CVPs, or yes, just for the new CUP CVPs.
Okay, aren't we trying to avoid the situation wherein a permittee did not pay the taxes? Because they pay on a quarterly basis, right?
Correct. But I think what the city manager and I had talked about previously is standardizing a timeline as to when we do a tax assessment, so that whenever we don't collect taxes from the permittees, we go ahead and do the tax assessment process right away, so
Right away.
that
Okay,
we
okay.
don't end up having delinquent taxes from.
So we avoid a long-term delinquent. Okay.
Correct.
All right, very good. Thanks for the clarification. All right, any question of Wang Su or Anna? Councilmember Morse?
No.
Councilmember Coops?
So let me understand, if I'm gonna apply to get a
Permittee.
dispensary,
Mhm. Okay.
4 million, I'm still responsible for the tax.
Mhm.
Now, Sutton comes in and he says, that's double what Dan's gonna do. He only makes 7 million. Now he's responsible. He's got a permit.
Mhm.
Now he's a player now. The other guy, he's gone.
You won't get a permit.
He won't get.
Yeah.
No, the guy, the $5 million guy, me,
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm gone. But you're able to buy your way in with false information, and putting your money where your mouth is. Right?
Mhm.
So you can play the system.
But there
That-
is that
But there-
process where they're
Right.
looking at the background also of why are you coming up with that?
Yeah, and again, I think to that point, I would reiterate, you issue these for 1 year. That doesn't mean the council has to issue a renewal to that individual. So in that circumstance, I would expect that the council is probably going to consider someone's inability to pay in 1 year, perhaps as a consideration of whether or not you're going to renew that permit going forward. So in that circumstance, that person didn't hold up to their end of the bargain. The council might consider that as part of the renewal question mark. So you'd be back into this, if that were not renewed, you'd be back into this same process again and going back out to.
But at least we collected the guaranteed first-year revenue.
And then that's the key right there.
Mhm.
It's the first year guarantee.
Guaranteed.
After that, correct me if I'm wrong, it's based off of an audit, right? Do we do an audit of their, or how does that?
We
Well,
have the option doing an audit. We don't,
The audit assures that whatever tax is being collected in accordance with the specifics of the tax itself, not necessarily, ensuring against.
Well, the reason I
the
say that though
guarantee.
is because in the same scenario, someone could say 5 million, but then they actually sold 7 million, so they owe a difference of 2 million. How are we going to ensure that that's also not happening, right?
what do you mean, not happening?
So for example,
It can happen and we collect more money.
right, because
Yeah.
we're doing an audit, right?
Right.
So that's
No,
what I'm saying.
No, we don't have to do an audit because they will report to us on a quarterly basis. So for example, let's say they exceeded their revenue on the third quarter.
Right.
So right away, at the end of the third quarter, they're gonna pay us more taxes right away. We don't have to wait for an audit, correct?
Correct, but I think to what Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez's point, we do periodic audits because we do collect the cannabis taxes on a quarterly basis, and the permittees self-report their taxable gross receipts. And as you are aware, we do periodic audits to make sure that what they've reported is actually what they've sold. Because without those, we don't have the safeguards and internal controls in place to make sure that what they're putting on paper is actually what's happening in the stores.
So to Larry's point, or to Larry's question, at a future date after year one, there's kind of that system in place that obviously if sales decrease or increase, taxes that they pay shift is no longer the guaranteed amount, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So what's going to happen here, just like any other renewal, they give us the pro forma for the next year on year 2 and year 3 and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I
So
think,
the only point here is the guarantee us on the first year.
The first
yes,
year.
and-
Okay.
and
Right.
the-
Mhm.
correct. And the intent there, keep in mind, the intent of the guarantee is to establish, you're trying to find the most viable and best operator, best question mark, operator that you can find in order to operate in your city, given you have a limited number of dispensary permits. Ostensibly, if they come in and they bid that, they get the permit and they're operating and it's all hunky-dory and running well, going into the second year, that becomes unnecessary because you've already found that best operator. Now, if the council, as part of a renewal question, wanted to say you're going to guarantee every year, you could make that but you don't do that. You could make that a condition of your permits, but you don't do that of your renewals. You don't do that right now. So the intent is finding that best operator in the first place. That's what you're trying to accomplish. So.
I say, Ray, you know, you're a bigger fish. You're doing 7 million a year. I'm only doing 4. Up to you. You are now, I'm not going to business and give it to you or sell it to you because I don't want to pay that part that I promised.
Yeah, the permits, under that circumstance, the permit would not be transferable. They would have to come to you,
Permit's
like,
not transfer. I'm simply but selling my business, my book of business to them,
well,
my customer list.
I suppose they couldn't conduct business, I mean, unless you're selling to someone who has an existing business in Bellflower, you could do that, but the permit to operate is not transferable unless the council
So you mean you're
approved it.
closing your
I'm
business?
closing a store,
Okay.
and I'm gonna say, I've got a value here, I've got a customer list, all computerized. Ray, you give me $5,000, you have all my mailing address, and they'll come to you. My phone number, you get it all. But I'm out of business. I'm not gonna, I didn't make any money, and God bless you if you can, here's your.
So that's a private transaction between you and Ray. And then that's going to open up another permit.
Yes, it will.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
And it doesn't change the ownership like you talked about how we got stuck
No.
on Kaliva. We didn't know who owned
No,
it.
because you're
I'm
you're
walking
selling
away.
your customer list to Ray,
Right.
as an example. Yeah, okay.
Now, when we weight the different aspects, I think
Mhm.
instead of the 7,
Right. Mhm.
and we've worked on the deposit.
The
we're
working
working
the
on
working capital.
working capital.
Mhm.
We've adjusted all these things.
Right,
In a little,
mhm.
probably a little more liberal method. I don't think we've gotten more stringent.
No, it's lighter.
Everyone speak-
It's lighter actually.
We've lightened the
Yeah.
load a little
Yeah.
bit.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Does the fact that I'm opening a new store, I can open in 3 months, somebody else is gonna take 12 months to open. Do I get any benefit to that? Generation of money quicker. Do I get
I think you've,
evaluation?
I think actually the way you've structured this, because you're asking them to bid on that 12-month period, regardless of when they open, you're telling us what you're going to make in a 12-month period. You've established an apples-to-apples comparison in that regard, regardless of when they open. Now, if they come back before you in December and they're not open yet, certainly I would expect, again, the council's going to have some very serious questions about their ability to meet their guarantees, and therefore may or may not renew that permit going forward. But you've sort of established that apples to apples at the beginning as part of the base criteria, or as part of the issuance of the permit in the first place.
Is there equal weight put on each requirement?
The
$1 million guy get priority to the $5 million guy, even though it's bogus?
two separate parts. I don't know if you have the flow chart that you had from the last meeting, if you could pull it up. But if not, remember you had your base requirements that we said, check the boxes effectively, that you meet all of these base requirements, and then we pre-qualify you to submit a sealed bid to us. So that when it comes before the council, the question before the council is really, hey, all of these people meet these base requirements, in other words, the 3 years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those base requirements are met. That's off the table. The question becomes that highest bid amount, so that when it's coming to you, we can come to you and say, here's the bids that were received, this one's the highest, ostensibly that's the one the council chooses to go forward with. Under this structure, yes, think of this like, go ahead.
Unless they are not responsible.
Correct, that's what I was gonna say.
Responsible bid.
Looking at this in the context of, although it's not the same, a public works bid where you're selecting the lowest bidder. If someone comes in and is absurdly low in that bid, we would take a detailed look at that. Right.
I don't want to go there. I can't say they don't qualify, but they're not.
Well, no, we would ostensibly under that circumstance.
Take the other bid, which may be higher or lower, because I know I did the project on.
Under this circumstance, in a public works contract, normally, pre-charter city, if you will, you would declare that bidder to be non-responsive and/or non-responsible, and therefore reject that bid and go to the next bid. In this circumstance, you could do virtually the same process, and we could compare to that pro forma and to a realistic assumption and say they're way off base with this $15 million estimation, and therefore the council can declare that to be a non-responsive bid and go with the next one that is more realistic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but again, we need to be.
Yeah. So
But
like
again, we need to be objective, though. There's
Correct.
no subjectivity anymore at that point.
right, because you're establishing it based off of an objective criteria.
Gross sales is the only real variable, because all the rest are cut and dry.
Yes,
Experience. Amount of money you have.
that's absolutely correct. That's exactly the point.
All a given. The only variable is what they put in as their gross sales.
Which is exactly the point, yes. We are very intentionally trying to maintain as much objectivity in the process
And I'm already
as
planning for
possible.
guys to blow everybody's doors off and not, and just say, well, it was worth it. I got the permit, I'm cool.
No, but no, keep in mind, they have to deposit some cash up front, and they guarantee 1 year. So I think that's a very reasonable stopgap measure to make sure that they're not, again, using the pie in the sky estimates. So if they estimate 10 million and they really only can deliver 5 million, well, they guarantee 10 million. They're going to pay taxes 10 million.
We're gonna redo them the next year.
We don't have to.
No, we don't have to.
We don't have to.
Choice.
Exactly. If they're really off, for example, let's say they promised 10 million and only delivered 1 million. Well,
Well, they didn't open on time, and we've had.
exactly.
They said we're gonna open then, and a year went by, and they owed for the whole year.
At least we collected taxes for 1 year based on an inflated number.
And then we'll go back to the original concept of you and I said, we'll do it as long as we make money, right?
Okay, any other question? Councilmember Dunn. Mhm. 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 Exactly. Right. Mhm. month 7.
6 months, month 7, or
Mhm.
whatever, and goes for,
Mhm.
for a year.
Mm-hmm. 4. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. I'm assuming that's the case, right?
Ryan, that's what he said it was.
Yeah.
but I don't, I don't see it written anywhere.
That is the case.
That's the case. Okay.
That's the way I read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be the same as a performa.
I'm assuming that they will guarantee based on their pro forma, right? Otherwise, why present a pro forma that they cannot guarantee? Yes.
I put goals out every year. I have
Mm.
a budget. I have goals every year. I've
Right,
done it
right.
for 20
Mm.
years. I don't make them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you put it out there as a target to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you reach for it, you're going to have a good year, even
Right.
though it's less than your
Mm-hmm.
That's what a performer is.
Right. Yeah.
Don't even tell you.
So that's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying. I think they need to be. I think the positive thing here, they have to be realistic in terms of their pro forma. Realistic. Yeah. Mm. Right. Mm. So just to kind of close, in year 2, they can adjust their pro forma at that point, based on reality. Correct. Just like any other permittee.
Yeah, I mean, ostensibly, the council can establish whatever criteria you want,
Yeah.
because just like any other renewal applicant.
Okay. All right. Any other question of staff?
I have a question of staff.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll keep it brief. So in one of the requests from staff is a resolution to adopt city manager seeking city council's authorization to begin accepting and processing cannabis-related conditional use permits, so CUPs and CBPs, starting March 1st through March 31st. What will be done between now and the start process of March 1st to notify operators out there that there's an application process being opened? I'm curious to.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez, for that, we'll probably update the web page for the cannabis, and we'll probably have a 1-pager or 2-pager regarding that kind of provides something along these lines in paragraph form that outlines the procedures and requirements to submit for a bid or their applications for CBPs. As this is a cannabis item, not sure how far and wide the council would like for us to fly this. I'm not sure if you want to put something on a newspaper or something that Bellflower is accepting cannabis applications. We can certainly do that if you would like. We can also tap the shoulders of some of the operators in the region or some of those state operators, and until we find that there is sufficient applications.
Can we send letters to at least the existing operators?
Oh, of course, we'll be tapping into the existing operators as well.
Well,
We got to wait.
depending on location.
Yeah, okay, a location, okay.
At least, I think that we owe it to them. At least let them know.
Yeah, it would make us look like we're trying.
Okay. Any other question, Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez? All right.
Mr. Mayor, there is one outstanding question that came up at the last meeting about, speaking of location. Location-based, right now you have a 1,000-foot restriction. It came up at the last meeting. We didn't get direction from you guys. If you want to provide direction to us, there is a path to do that. It came up from 1,000 feet to 3,000 feet apart. If you wanted to adjust that, the method by which to do that I would suggest is we make that right now a condition of whatever permit is issued. If you don't want to do it, that's entirely fine too. But if you do, we need to change the municipal code in order to do that. So I need direction to do that if you want to do it. So
Is there an appetite to limit the new permittee to at least 3,000 feet from an existing permittee? Councilmember Dunn, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, but I'm worried about existing.
Can you clarify that?
Okay, so if we have existing ones that are existing.
Within 3,000?
Within 3,000,
within.
under 3,000.
I don't.
Grandfathers.
I don't believe there's any within 3,000 at this point.
There is. I think there is.
Medicine Woman?
Medicine woman. Medicine woman. Yeah.
I do have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Off topic,
No,
or
let me
not
just
on
poll-
topic.
poll-
Go ahead.
poll the council here. Are you? What's your
I-
appetite?
Well, we would need to have a fair solution for Medicine Woman if they're within 3,000.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
within-
Grandfathered would be apparent, but then
Well, we can say new permittee.
new permittees.
New permittee cannot be within, if there's an appetite to do that.
There's some properties out there, I believe, with
So if we give direction to staff, then they will be excluded.
Well,
probably.
on that note, do we have the map? That's because it's already dictating what areas are available, anyways. Do we have a map that for the zoning?
I don't know that I have that handy, but you do have the outstanding conditional use permits. Ostensibly, those individuals could apply through this process if they wanted to. My suggestion to you would be, following this process, once we've sort of, put a bow on this and wrapped it up, that I would like to be able to come back to you to revoke those outstanding CUPs. So you don't have those floating out in the wind going forward.
But if we go that route, we need to change the ordinance first, correct?
In what way?
Because there's an
The
existing
3,000 feet.
ordinance allowing permittees within, there's no distance restriction at
Oh,
this
I
point.
suppose that's a separate question from the existing CUPs. But
Right.
But if you wanted to establish the distance requirement at something more than what it is now, you would have to change the municipal code to do that. But that couldn't happen as far as within time for this process. So if you wanted to establish it, my point was only you could establish that as a condition of the permit
Okay.
now,
For-
and then come back to do it within the municipal code,
At a
so it's
later
clear
date.
going forward. And to the question about the non-conforming status of existing permittees, yes, they would effectively be considered non-conforming, like any other non-conforming use,
Mm-hmm.
for which you could consider that going forward.
from the presentation that 3,200 between them. Delhi was located, and then there was 1,000 or 20, or 3,100.
Mhm.
Medicine Woman, Catalyst. Medicine Woman to the Catalyst, there was like 2,600,
less than
I think.
3,000.
Is that what I recall? Is that
Right,
what you
yeah, less than
recall?
3,000.
That's
That's
the
very
one
close.
that it seems to be, Medicine Woman, it was out of the, we're okay, because we originally said 1,000 feet, and it just so happens that they're all over 3,000 feet, except Medicine Woman, as I recall.
So,
Yeah. I think, I think Larry wants to say something.
No, let me
Oh,
let me
not
just
yet?
poll
Okay.
the council first. Do you have an appetite for restricting to at least 3,000 feet between new dispensary and
Yes.
an existing
Oh, yeah,
dispensary?
it makes sense in this climate.
Okay, all right. So there's an appetite to do that.
we will take that direction.
Okay, all right. So that's settled.
Yeah.
All right, Larry, do you have something to say about our discussion?
That was what I was trying to convey.
So we're worried about.
Okay, thank you. Do we have time to address that concern, or are we confident that it's over 3,000?
No one's looked.
Yeah, I couldn't say that I'm confident in all honesty because,
No one's looked.
frankly, I mean, administratively, we're not looking at one permittee or one
Right,
particular
right, right.
location of another. The direction from the council was open this up to the world, so the question of a distance requirement really doesn't have anything to do with any particular business or another. So I couldn't say whether the existing location that Larry's looked at is.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't want to kind of delay the process any longer. We've been waiting for this for a long, long time. So, all right. I know, I know. So, do you want to kind of postpone the requirement for 3,000 at this
Yeah,
point?
we can do
and-
that. We can do that by,
postpone it
we
at
can
this
do
point,
that by
and then-
next council meeting, probably.
And suspend that for, at least for this round?
Yeah. Just separate them and get this thing going, and by next council meeting, we should be able to, that seems like an easy one.
Easy to do what? I mean,
I
The
mean,
the
the mesh-
radius,
the-
3,000-foot radius.
you have two processes to accomplish that. Number one, if you want to do it with this outstanding dispensary permit that you have currently, you won't and don't have a municipal code that establishes that 3,000 square foot. Your existing requirement
It's
would
1,000.
apply unless you take some other measure. The other measure in this, if you want it to apply to this particular issuance, would be to establish that as a condition of the CUP and/or CBP to be issued, right? And then come back later and address the municipal code so that it's clear in the municipal code. And effectively, we're doing it outside the municipal code for this one particular instance because of the timing issue. So you could accomplish it quickly. If you want to do it later and allow this process to go forward with the existing 1,000 foot requirement, that's entirely up to you guys. That's why I asked the question today.
Okay. So I'm kind of leaning towards
If they
just
wanna
letting this process go without the 3,000 feet requirement at
Yeah.
this point,
Yeah.
and then let's just address that
As long as we're
separately.
not did it. All of a sudden, 10 permittees come within 1,000 feet. Yeah.
Well, they cannot within 1,000 feet, though.
Yeah.
They cannot within 1,000 feet. Right, and they cannot come in
Yeah.
within 1,000 feet anyway
Yeah.
at this point. The question is the 3,000 feet.
Right.
So are you okay with
Yeah.
kind of? I know, that's my point. Exactly. I don't want to delay this any longer at this point. Because I think the process to me is very clear in terms of it's fair and clear and easier to implement, and there's no subjectivity. So that because I'm listening to our city attorney to kind of protect us from the subjectivity in terms of awarding this CBP. All right, so are you okay with just the way it is at this point?
So just what we're doing here with no 3,000 feet, you mean?
At this point,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I
All
would
right.
like to hear from, Larry made a comment earlier on public comments regarding the 12-month guarantee. I'd just like to, he didn't mention any of that.
I think we addressed that. It's guaranteed only the first year. Then after that is based.
Yeah. Yeah,
No,
yeah,
we're not.
no, the performer is 3 years, I think. or
Yeah, the
whatever,
guarantee is only
But
1
he
year.
did mention 3
Yeah.
years. You have any more comments on that? You're welcome.
Year one,
Yeah.
that's it.
Potentially, if we got a license in July.
Right.
We have a 6-month, window, we're starting to pay, so timing of this is a little tricky, but the guarantee is for the first year.
The timing is up only on the first year, but once you get the renewal, then you're off with any other permittees. That's how I understand it. Right.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
should be clear because the going into the second year becomes the question because the second year is
Yeah.
not guaranteed in any fashion from the
Right.
city for a permit. So that guarantee is simply looking at a 12-month period.
Based on your pro forma at
Correct.
that point, just like any other permittee that we do now. Correct. Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I got a question for you, Larry. You know how we're gonna be discussing at our next, not too distant future, adjustments, I should say, to
Mhm.
right?
There's a study that will, a consultant will,
Yeah,
the party looking into
yeah.
the council's given us direction to bring on a consultant to do some of that study. Yeah, sure.
for an existing permittee, and you had one. Would you be attracted, probably not cultivation, to manufacturing or distribution if they were at a lower rate? I'm just taking a poll from you now. I'd give it that.
But distribution made a lot of revenue because taxes on
Mm-hmm.
the distribution revenue. Yeah, that's in essence what's happening out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so by lowering your where you were incredibly attractive, large, super tall warehouses and things like that, because in essence, this just becomes the charge. So I think lowering the fees on good, and of course I support
Oh, I get it all.
retail as well.
What-
But definitely.
I wanted staff to hear that as they consult with a third party that's looking at this, that we have so many permits on the shelf that are not being utilized. At the main one, you paid the $40,000, we come in and say, for 15,000 or 20,000, you can do this. Oh, I like to play,
The problem becomes
because it's worthless to us on the shelf.
the distribution hub. Originally, that's what the deli was 10 years ago. If you
Mhm.
remember, it was a distro and retail that had changed because of parking. But I really support your push towards looking at the fees, especially.
Oh.
Okay, sorry.
And Delhi gave up their distribution permit, right?
They had to
Yeah.
because of the parking situation, and we had to cut off 17 feet off the back of the building.
Okay.
And those are things that we're going to re-examine.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with the taxes that we charge. It's the facility that was the issue.
In that particular instance, but the state has rules around distribution premises that actually dictate over the cities. So we couldn't turn the deli building into a distro. Catalyst has the space to be able to do it.
I get it.
But those other licenses are still open for you.
Right, well, I want to try to make them saleable.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I just want to get your opinion, that's another discussion that we're going to have.
It's a good one.
Stick your foot in the
Yeah.
water. No.
All right. Anything else? All right. Is there a motion to?
Don't look at me like that, Mr.
Okay.
Can I make a motion what we talked about?
For the sake of our city clerk, can you be more specific? There are two action items that
suppose I can.
they would like us to take, correct?
All right.
Two action items.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 026-05, and we're going to authorize the city manager to accept the process applications for cannabis-related CUPs and CUPs as discussed.
Motion by Councilmember Danton, seconded by Councilmember Coops. Roll call, please.
I just want to make sure that the adoption of the resolution is as amended with the supplemental material.
Oh,
in
that's
front of
right.
you.
As
Oh, yeah.
As
Yeah.
amended.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, with 6A supplemental material.
And I second that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilmember Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Coops,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Mayor Santinez.
Aye. Okay, with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
Okay.